Testing, testing. Brian, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you.
Ready to?
Yep.
All right, we're going to go ahead and call the Cook County Health System Finance Committee meeting to order. Will the secretary please call the roll?
Director Deere? Director Harrington?
Present.
Director Robinson?
Present.
Director Story is around the corner, and Chair Ryder.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Yes, I see that Director Story has joined us, so we can add him to the roll as well.
Yes.
All right, great. Actually, in all fairness to Director Story. He was here before I was, so. Do we have any directors who are part of the committee that are, participating remotely?
We do not, I don't see anyone connected at this point.
If Director Deere does join us at some point, we will make a, motion to allow him to participate in the meeting as a voting member. Do we have any public testimony?
I didn't receive any registrations to provide public testimony nor any written.
Okay. Is there anyone here to provide, public testimony who hasn't previously registered? Seeing none, we're gonna go to the August 17th, 2023 Finance Committee meeting minutes. These were approved by the board at the August meeting. They're being presented for the committee's review and discussion if necessary. Are there any corrections that need to be made to the minutes? Any corrections that need to be made to the minutes? Any corrections that need to be made to the minutes? Hearing none. Is there a motion to accept the minutes?
So moved.
Motion's been made. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and properly seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. All right. Next on the agenda item, and on the agenda are, contract and procurement items. We have a total of 23. Our, Chief Procurement Officer, Charles Jones, is making his way to the table to help us facilitate, going through these. And then we will be going through and having the, sponsors or representative presenting with, any assistance they need from Charles. Charles, is there any notes to these, items that you want to make, before we start presenting them?
Good morning, Charles. CCH. Good morning. There's 23 items presented before you today for review and approval. Of those 23, 22 require responsible letters from the Office of Contract Compliance. We have 5 back and 17 outstanding.
Right. Items 1 and 2, behavioral health, are, is Dr. Nutter here? There he is.
Sorry for not taking my seat earlier, new to the process. The first contract is an ARPA-funded sole source contract with Unitas. The vendor provides a closed loop referral system so that we can assure that when patients are referred out, that they receive the needed care from external agencies, and also so that we can coordinate care for folks returning from those that external care. The contract is for 36 months, and it's a $2.1 million contract. Any questions regarding that one, or should I go to the second?
One question. On that contract, does it allow you to have a group so that it's not each individual license, or does it actually vary by how many people you will have actually utilizing the Unitas?
My understanding is it's the former, but I can double check that.
Okay.
Any other questions? All right, go ahead to the next one.
Second is also ARPA funded, and it is regarding the mental health, the Behavioral Health Summit. And that contract has been, the selectee is the Kennedy Forum. That selection was done through an RFP process, the deliverables of which will be focus groups prior to the summit itself, recommendations post the summit, and then assistance as a consultant in crafting a strategic plan for a new behavioral health authority. Contract is for $831,000.
Any questions on this item?
I have a question. Dr. Miller, could you just give a general overview of just the Kennedy Forum? Who are they? They're out in New Jersey, we see that, but can you talk a little bit about their work in this space?
When the committee reviewed the 4 proposals, the Kennedy Forum's proposal stood out for being by far the most detailed in terms of its part of this has to do with establishment of a behavioral health authority. Theirs was the only proposal that mentioned other behavioral health authorities throughout the country. It was more detailed. They have had significant experience both in the area and nationally as a consultant in behavioral health. Is there another specific, is there?
So if I can jump in here, the Kennedy Forum is a nationally recognized organization that has done extensive work on mental and behavioral health issues. They've done work in and out of Chicago, both as an organization standing on their own, but also, I believe, as a partner to other healthcare organizations doing work on mental and behavioral health. It's I can't remember what his name was. He was the former Congressman Kennedy, who has been a long advocate, having both someone who living with issues around mental health and substance abuse, leading it. And if someone can please remind me what his first name is. And Patrick Kennedy, yeah, Patrick Kennedy. So
I was particularly interested, Dr. Nerdick, in the Kennedy Forum, because I was wondering if you were going to reference Johns Hopkins and their affiliation with the Kennedy Forum. And I was wondering if that was one and the same. The name is obviously prevalent. They've done, Director Wright said they've done a lot of work in mental health, and I was wondering if that was the same organization or was there some intersection with?
I don't know the relationship between the Kennedy Forum and Johns Hopkins, but I can certainly look into that and get back with you.
Okay. Thank you. That was my only question.
is there any particular concerns or anything?
No, I think that, as we all know, that the Kennedy family has historically done a lot of work in this area in terms of disabilities, mental and physical, going back to the patriarch of the Kennedy family. So it's the matriarch.
Yeah.
The matriarch of the Kennedy family. So I was just curious about that intersection with the family's historical work in this area, which we all know is so important.
Yes.
Right. Thank you, Dr. Nutter. Thank you. We're going to go ahead and move to clinical, and I'd ask our Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Claudia Fegan, to come up and present the next item.
Thank you, Chair Ryder. Dr. Claudia Fegan, Chief Medical Officer. So these are disposables for items that we use in the cath lab on a daily basis.
Any questions on request number 3? Hearing none, thank you, Dr. Fegan.
Thank you.
We're going to move to request number 4, which is going to be presented by Shannon Andrews, our Chief Equity and Inclusion Officer. Good morning, Shannon.
Good morning, Chair Ryder. Thank you. Shannon Andrews, Chief Equity and Inclusion Officer. The item in front of you today is a request to execute a contract with Language Line Solutions. This vendor will be providing language support for telephonic, video interpreter, and document translation services. It's a $16 million contract for 3 years with 2 one-year renewals. The vendor will provide 24/7, 365 days a week with 365 days a year with on-demand and interpreting services in over 240 languages, in addition to giving us access to over 5,000 professional linguists for the purposes of translation.
Any questions for Shannon on request number 4?
Just a quick one, Shannon. This is only for clinical intervention, not for any other activities involving the systemic. Meaning, if there's a conference and you needed an interpreter, would this company provide that support?
They could provide that support. go out with an RFP because there are numerous local MWBE firms who provide on-site interpreter services. So we think that there's a unique opportunity to ensure that for those things that are not clinically driven, the element of this contract and this vendor is that it is video and audio. And so to the extent that we have a patient or someone on site who does not speak a language that is provided by one of our on-site interpreters, this service line would allow us access to, again, over 290 languages. As it relates to events and things that we can plan for in advance in that way, we currently have 2 contracts with local vendors who provide that type of service. But having said that, certainly in a pinch, this company does provide and would have access. They partner with local vendors here who are on the ground in terms of providing on-site interpreters.
But this is clinical.
Yes, this is certainly supplemental in terms of being able to provide by way of phone and video on-site interpreter services. But in addition to that, they will also provide translation services as well as some assessment and training related to bilingual staff.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Any other questions for Shannon? All right, hearing none. Thank you, Shannon. Next up is our first report of the day from Pam Casara, our Chief Financial Officer.
Thank you, Chair Ryder. Pam Casara, Chief Financial Officer. Finance has one contract before you today, specifically medical records. This contract is an execute contract with ScanStat Technologies, which will be our release of information vendor. It was awarded by RFP. It is for 3 years, starting this December through 2026, and with 2 one-year renewal options, and is a revenue-generating contract from the fees that we charge for making copies of medical records. Any questions?
Any questions for Pam on request number 5? Hearing none, thank you, Pam. We're going to move to request number 6, Health Information Systems.
Morning, Directors. Brian Pravel, Technology Information Officer, representing Angela O'Banion. The contract before you is to extend and increase our contract with Konica Minolta. This will allow us to replace hardware for and supplies for 430 multifunction devices, about 1,900 printers, and includes on-site services, printer supplies, maintenance.
Are there any questions for Brian?
Now that you're back, yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
Brian, the purpose of this extension, is this for what?
Sorry, could you repeat the question?
The purpose of this extension?
Is to add dollars and time so that we can have our replacement hardware and supplies for all of our multifunction and printer systems.
I guess I was looking for an answer that your response to the fact that this contract was termed, or you were going to the market.
There is an intent. Yeah, so last year we were planning to work with Cook County Bureau of Technology, partner with them to do a system-wide managed print services contract. That did not get approved. So this year I did reach out to them. They're attempting to do that again. If that gets approved, we do intend to partner with them. If that does not get approved, we do intend on doing an RFP.
So wasn't, and I'll lean a little bit towards Charles on this, was it the county commission didn't approve BOT's request?
No, sir, it's not the county commissioners. We generally with this, we'll work with the Bureau of Technologies to see what they're gonna do for countywide. They take care of all the copiers throughout the county, with the exception of the health system. We've looked before in the past to partner with them, but for various reasons, we've always ended up, doing our own RFP. So once again, we're talking to them and trying to see, if that's feasible, but if not, we'll go forward with ours for our 400+ units.
Is there a timeline in which you've given yourself in order to work, Brian, with, Tom Lynch and his staff?
Yes, I've been working, mainly with, HEMA, the Chief Technology Officer, who's my peer for the Bureau of Technology. And, we're basically waiting to see whether or not they get the funding for the RFP process. So I'm expecting that by the end of the year, we should have some, answer as to whether or not we'll be partnering with them or going on our own.
Would this, if this, transmittal is approved this morning, would that compromise your ability at a later date to do a joint contract with, BOT?
No, it would not.
So you could be able, once again, as Charles would remind you, there's an exit clause?
Yes, we always have a termination for convenience clause. One other comment that I'd make too is generally too with the health systems doing their own, contracts, there's a lot of times with the clinical, there's a lot of security access and stuff that belongs on our systems that the county normally don't have.
I can understand it, but if it's printers,
But copiers, multifunction devices and all, and they normally keep within them all of the data that's within the unit.
Yeah, we do have some additional security that we have to put on, have to do some additional maintenance and stuff to make sure we're compliant with our HIPAA and security requirements, badging, authentication, things like that.
thank you, I appreciate that. I will follow up with, BOT on that.
Just, we gotta get you a little bit more into the microphone.
Like this?
Yeah, just.
Well, thank you. I have no further questions.
Yeah, and I would just probably highlight, and correct me if I'm wrong, that I think you touched on this, printers aren't just printers anymore. They're copiers and scanners, and they retain data, which, you know, with, medical information has a whole nother level of security and document retention policies.
Yes, sir.
All right, any other questions? Here, thank you.
Thank you.
We're gonna move to request number 7 through 9, which are being presented by, Valerie Amos, our Chief Human Resources Officer.
Good morning. This is Valerie Amos, Chief Human Resources Officer. The contract before you is for Deloitte. This is an amendment and extension for HR support and services. Part of the construct that we have built is for HR optimization. We've looked internally to identify a number of process improvement initiatives that we need, not only to support recruiting, but also the employee experience. And so this contract represents a number of those developments, design processes as it relates to employee experience, such as leave of absences, tuition reimbursements, and so forth. So we are planning to sunset Deloitte after this particular extension so that as we conduct our RFP, Master Services Agreement for HR, to really continue to support what we call recruiting and, of course, employee experience long-term. This will be the final extension that I'm requesting.
Are there any questions on that item?
Valerie, yes, Chair. I have just a couple of questions. Could you just sort of summarize in a brief fashion the work history, the work experience that Deloitte has had with CCH over the life of this contract?
Sure.
In a summary fashion, tell us the added value.
Absolutely.
And the cost, first, the cost, if you could do a couple of things, and it's the timeline of the initial contract and the cost to date. For the services that Deloitte has provided to CCH.
Sure. So the initial contract represented timeframes August 2022 through February 2023. The scope of that particular initial contract represented what I call HR optimization. This represented onboarding as well as offboarding process transformation. So that means technically attracting, recruiting talent, as well as working on exit survey strategies and so forth. As I've mentioned before in previous board presentations, our exit strategy was not very strong, and so we needed to develop a more robust process for that. Deloitte's contribution has also assisted us with identifying performance management improvement roadmaps, and so I came before you at the last board meeting along with my colleague Angela O'Banion so that we could identify Oracle as a platform for us to move from paper performance management to a technology solution, and Deloitte is assisting us with outlining that roadmap so that we can ensure that we have not only the competencies associated with performance management, but also all of the key outputs. In addition to that, we have a broken job description process. Everything is manual. My colleagues to my right can tell you about all of our job description challenges. And Deloitte was commissioned to come in and also identify job architectural redesign, as well as supporting some compensation market analysis. And so, and last but not least, recruiting. They have brought on a number of recruiters to assist us with our large volume and HR technology strategy as it relates to what we call Salesforce, which is an internal platform that was already in place when I started here in June of 2021, but had not been fully executed across the entire system. And that is an employee self-service platform that Deloitte is assisting us with pushing out to the entire organization. So they definitely have performed some or provided some key performance indicators. Over 300 jobs were benchmarked for market competitiveness. Over 40 job descriptions were recommended for updates. They've standardized our job description families, so we had a lot of broken internal processes. In terms of hiring, they supported over 640 hiring actions, and so that the hiring actions could mean postings, validating candidates, because of course we are mandated by our employment plan process to ensure that everyone is qualified before they receive an offer, and of course sending those offers across for finalization. They brought on not only 24 resources, but some key resources that we just didn't have internally. So we were lacking that talent on our team, and Deloitte provided that. So that was the initial contract, and that represented 7 months. And the value of that contract was $4.7 million. Contract extension number 1, which represents March through September of 2023. We continued on with a lot of what I just mentioned. In addition to that, there were additions to the scope. Some of those additions included some of the things that I've spoken about at previous board meetings, such as the overhaul of the orientation process, manager mentoring programs, as well as leadership competency frameworks. In addition to everything else that I've said, we also have them working on this construct and also HR operating model so that we can provide service and come up with our service level agreements and what we're calling a service catalog, because without a true blueprint, HR is just moving at the speed of requests that come in, but we have to have a platform and a structure and a construct in order for us to continue to move forward in an expeditious manner. So there's a lot of key performance indicators, and I can provide the slide presentation to any of you, but again, we had a number of outputs there. There were 44 resources given to us by Deloitte during that time period. It represented 6 months and $6.7 million. This contract before you represents 57 resources, 57. They have added more recruiters. They have added more support in terms of the communication out for the recruiting efforts. Most importantly, we are working on deploying some employee portals, as well as more leadership development program launches, as well as career pathway programs. And so all of this is about training, development, and career progression for our employees. In addition to that, as I mentioned, they've brought more recruiters, so recruiting will continue. Without the support of the external vendors, our team is still, you know, on the leaner side, and we have recruited a number of recruiters as well as other disciplines within the HR space. If we do not have the resources from Deloitte and some of the other vendors, we will probably cease to be able to accelerate hiring as we have performed, as well as some of the improvement initiatives. So they are working on end-to-end recruiting, job postings, just everything associated with that. And I do have these key performance metrics. I won't go into them all. Happy to provide this to the board. The value of this contract is 6 months, and the approximate dollar value is 9,057 individuals. And so I can answer additional questions.
Any other questions?
I do. And I'm not sure if this question is for you. I think it's more toward us. I wasn't expecting to hear this, that's why I had to run and get a pen. And writing it down and looking at it, and I see that they're providing a very valuable resource to the organization. And I understand that it's going to go up for RFP, but when I look at the numbers in the first contract, there were 24 resources. In the second contract, 44 resources. And the current one that we're considering, 57 resources. The concern that I have is that they're filling a gap that is much needed to solve a very big problem that has yet to be solved, but we're making very good traction. What are we going to do in 6 months? Because the resources, the need for them is not going to go away. The idea of Salesforce, which I am familiar with, if you don't have anyone who can use that tool is dead in the water. It's a fantastic tool, but you must have people that can use it. So if we're utilizing Deloitte to be able to implement it and to deploy it, who are the people that are going to provide the support when the average person is trying to use it and they can't figure out something? Because that is what happens with Salesforce. Now, maybe the contract with Salesforce includes the ability to be able to call into a support line, but it depends on what level of support you can get. And the average person, they're not going to be able to use the tool as it's designed to be able to become as efficient as the software is designed to help. So my question is, what are we going to do? Because I don't see a real solution being put on the table. RFP just says all we did was just move it down the line to try to pay someone else money possibly. It didn't say we've solved the problem and put the resources in place to be able to have the organization functions as it should, which is probably contribute to such a big gap that we have.
So if I can jump in there, I mean, I think we're going out with, these are extensions, and the opportunity to put together an RFP that reflects the things that we've learned and the things that we need to do, should address what the strategic, goal is of going out for another contract, because then you get to write the RFP in a way that allows you to, put together a strategic vision of it, but you need to be able to have that moment to put the RFP out. So I would assume that we have data around the plan around Salesforce. It sounds like Deloitte is helping us use Salesforce, and also how it's landing with end users, and what how we're engaging with Salesforce as a vendor based on what our utilization is. Would that be fair to characterize?
So what they are doing is assessing the value of, how Salesforce can be really pushed out throughout the entire organization. Currently, we have it with one component or one area within Cook County Health, which is our CIRMAC, or Department of Corrections division. And so what we like to do is make certain that we can really push this out to the entire organization. We knew that there were some challenges with it, and it's been a while since it was pushed out to CIRMAC, and so we're evaluating all of that and And to your point, we want to do it well. And to your point, Director Robinson, we know that a system alone without support is not sustainable, which is why Deloitte has also put together a plan for us to identify some resources that we need in-house to sustain all of the things that they are putting together for us, because we won't have this talent, 2-3 years from now. Slalom also did the same thing, and we are looking at some potential, some new talent that we will need on the team in order to sustain and stand these processes up.
Yeah, I mean, this is all happening within the backdrop of trying to build the internal human resources team up, and also come up with processes, because our prior, not everyone had their challenges, so I don't want to lay this on any particular person, but before Israel hired Val to run human resources, we were sitting with a very challenging human resources department and paradigm that we had here that has improved greatly since then. So, so Sam, my view would be is that my hope is that as we develop the RFP, that the RFP addresses the things that we've learned since we've deployed Deloitte as a resource.
Well, the issue, I guess, that I'm hearing, I understand how the RFP, at least I think I understand how the RFP will work, but the human capital, the RFP is not going to address on a sustainable basis, because if we get someone else, another organization come in, they help out with the leadership framework or the operating model. That'll be, they know how to do it, they're learning, they're teaching us how to do benchmarks, but if there are not enough people, who's gonna do it?
Yeah, we also have, so we are also recruiting human resources professionals at the same time. There's a number of vacancies. What's your head count right now, Val?
I don't have it at the top of mind. I do know that we still have a number of vacancies, but in fairness, we do have some new titles that are not within today's budget. And that's what I think the value of these companies can bring. They can tell us what type of talent we need. Yeah.
Right. So it's both filling the vacancies and how to
identify
reshape it.
Right.
So whether those are in the current budget or in the budget that's being built, you're still short those positions.
That's right.
Let me ask a similar question, if not the same question, Valerie, in a different fashion. I just piggybacked on Director Robertson's expressed concern. The RFP that the transmittal that's before us today, will part of the work going forward, if this is approved, will provide for a transition, number one.
Mm-hmm.
Number two, will
Transition to what? Because I want to make sure we understand that.
transition.
Yeah, but are you saying transition to another contract or transition to out of having the contract?
Could I ask a question?
Let me just ask the director, right, with respect to my question. What I'm concerned about is this transition period, because Val has already said that she's going out for this like master agreement, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay.
So my concern is that will Deloitte help you in developing that master agreement? It might put them in conflict if they're interested in bidding on it.
No. So, if Deloitte wants to throw their hat in the ring like any other company, then obviously they are welcome to do so, but no.
The vendor does not help us put together an RFP.
No, they are not doing that. So this was based
Not
on.
the RFP per se, but the scope of work. She's saying that all the things that they've done for the last 18 months, right? We want to continue to build on that.
That's right.
Okay. So that master agreement that you referenced earlier is something that you and your team and Charles and Shannon and others will help develop over the next several months, so that when Deloitte terminates this potential agreement,
Mhm.
you will have something in place. That's what I'm concerned about, that there will be something in place. Is that your?
My question is two parts, something in place and also the human capital that's needed to operate it. Because everything that I heard, I see people coming in. There are actions that are taking place, but you still need personnel to be able to function after all of the other people leave.
Just in 1 second, Greg. So the question that Sam asked earlier, I believe I answered in that we are hiring, we're in the process of hiring, and we have contracts that are to help us fill the vacant positions, and all, including at some point when these new positions that are identified are put in the budget, which are they currently are they in the new budget, or are they potentially in the pool that we can draw from to create new positions? Because we created a pool of positions.
So they're the latter. They're the latter, because again, this good work is still being, realized. We're not done yet, which is why we do have some ideas. We even have a potential new org chart. So we have some ideas of what we need at this moment, but until a lot of the work is done, we won't know how many of those different
Can you give us a
individuals we need.
guesstimation about what that FTE will look like, that number that you're working?
Okay,
Yeah.
before we get to that, so the answer to your question is yes. We are working to get people in place in order to take advantage of the contract. The contract, we have the HR recruitment contract. Who's the vendor on that?
The HR recruitment contract, Slalom had assisted us with recruiting optimization, and then Cross Country assisted us with recruiting consultants as well as Deloitte. So the three of them have been assisting us.
So we have those. So the answer is yes. Your point is well taken, that we have to hire in order to have the people do the jobs, and not just have it with consultants.
So we are hiring people to work in HR to do those functions that have been performed by Deloitte.
We are hiring into vacancies, but Deloitte is identifying new talent that we will need. So hopefully in the upcoming budget, drawing from a potential pool of vacancies, maybe we can, again, just,
Vacancies,
So hang on, let me make sure that this is clear, because this can get confusing.
That's right.
So part of what Deloitte does is filling the gaps we have on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
The gaps that we have on the ground, to the extent that we're filling vacancies and also creating new titles, yes. There are functions at Deloitte that Deloitte and other vendors are doing that we are not hiring for, because those functions eventually go away or are integrated into the strategic planning of the system. So the answer to your question is yes, as long as we understand that there are some functions that Deloitte's doing that would be contracted by nature and eventually go away or get revisioned into a new type of contract, but is not something that would be not abnormal to reside with a vendor.
Sure, I'd like to make a comment.
Sure, let me just say, I want to get the answer to my question, and that is, can you give us a guesstimation on that FTE count going forward? I understand that you're still in the process of developing that, working with Deloitte and sourcing.
So
can you just
Otis, I was going to Craig, so Craig can provide some context, and that was before, you hadn't asked this question yet. You were attempting to answer.
Okay, well, go ahead, I'm right.
Okay, all right.
So, I would say I've only obviously been in the organization for just a little bit over a year, but, it's clear to me, and, working with Val, she's really embarked on a complete rebuild of the HR function. And I think she said an important thing. It's not done yet, right? She's still working on it in partnership with Deloitte and Slalom and some of the other vendors that we have working with that. And I think what she outlined is that this request is for a 6-month extension to continue that rebuild and really get us to that next level to say, this is how we're going to move forward. So, as far as a guesstimate of number of FTEs you might need, I'm not sure we're there yet. And that's part of what is these 57 resources are part of, building that plan moving forward, so that when we get to that next RFP, we're ready to say, this is what our final destination is really gonna be and how we're gonna move forward. And that's really what this request is.
And I respect that.
And one other thing that I want to make sure, because sometimes we get to a place in this meeting where we're getting to the essence of a contract when our role in this is to make sure that there's no apparent funny business, that we're spending our money wisely. But if it gets to the core of what we're doing as a policy, and there's questions around the strategic vision of the contract, that really resides with the Human Resources Committee and not with the Finance Committee or the full Board of Directors. So I just want to make sure that this is not the place to have debates about whether we're doing the right thing or the wrong thing in terms of policy.
I'll put it this way then, Chair. Before I support any transmittal going forward with respect to HR endeavors, I want to have a sense of the value, the worth of the contract that will support the human, and I know Val has done a great job. We'll all acknowledge, at least I'll acknowledge that.
I will as well.
Since she's been here, in that the need is there. I'll acknowledge that. I just want to have a sense, and if you say you can't do that this morning, to your point, Greg, and what you said, Chair, that's what this process is all about.
Mm-hmm.
I accept it.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to hear that, because then I'll say, great, Val, can you tell us when we will know that? If that's part of this master agreement that's coming forward, give us a heads up. That's all.
And I'd like to point out that this is an extension that's transitioning us to a full RFP. And in terms of how long this contract's been, we're just over a year into this contract with a couple of short-term extensions. So, I mean, I would suggest that if folks want to impact the way that RFP looks or have questions about it, the Human Resources Committee, and I would expect everybody who's got questions to attend the Human Resources Committee and ask those questions or ask them offline.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So you're absolutely right, Director Story. We are still in transition. I don't have an estimated head count yet. I think that's what we're trying to solve too, because some of the components within the scope in terms of infrastructure, governance model, those service delivery models, once that is built, then we can identify the number of sustainable resources that will be needed in order to execute. So we just don't know enough yet, but we're on this journey to find out. And I think, again, with the supports that this board has offered and our CEO and, you know, the support from county in general, we have made advancements, not only with recruiting, but also some of our internal process changes to hopefully advance the HR, perspective for our employees as well. So
Val, I
thank you.
want to be supportive of your work and that of the executive management team here at CCH. But when a $9 million transmittal comes before me, this narrative under prior contract history, new proposal justification, that does not suffice. We'll need to vote on
Hang on. I'm going to take issue with that, because the form for the issue is part of the paperwork. Everyone gets a briefing. We have other committee meetings. You have another role where you get a lot of insight into what the organization does strategically. This form is not how we judge the work that goes into apprising people, and directors can be briefed you have 4 weeks in between each meeting to get briefed or ask questions or to put the pause button on before you get to a meeting. So I just want to make sure, and I'm not, it may seem like I'm coming at you, but this form is not the this is a snapshot form that tees up the discussion at the meeting. This is not the whole of the data which is available to everyone for consideration.
And with all due respect to that, I can only speak for myself. The $9 million appeared to Otis Story last Thursday. $9 million, and like everyone else in this room, We all have other duties and responsibilities. So, with all due respect to that comment, maybe we are out of sync in your response about HR committee, and maybe that's where this conversation really should have been held.
Well, I will say that this is an information-intensive, board. We manage someone correct me if I'm, Pam, the budget is almost $5 billion, right? Almost $5 billion, right? $9 million is a lot of money. It's a lot of money. In the scope of the overall budget, it's very, very much incremental, and a number of people here, when you serve on this board, and it's a huge responsibility. My predecessor at the CFL used to sit on this board, and he said, Bob, you're gonna get a stack of papers, like a gigantic stack of papers, and you're gonna spend a lot of time on this board. And I carve out time to do the things on this board and prepare myself for the things that I'm focused on. Some of us have more time. I've had previous board members that were retired, and they went to every committee meeting, and they went to every budget hearing downtown, and they didn't have the luxury of having a job that allowed them to have complete interface with the system. So there's plenty of time. I'd love to give people more than 7 days notice, and there's time where we do that, but 7 days is actually a lot for a contract of this scope to figure out what the answer is.
Well,
Chair Ryder?
Yes, yeah, Joe.
Yeah, I have what I think is a clarifying question. I'm trying to get some clarity for myself. But there was a word that Craig used. He talked about rebuild, and there's this other term, optimization. And so we're starting with the rebuild and moving toward optimization. So optimization will continue. That's what I'm assuming. But the services, and this is a specific question, the services that Deloitte has provided and will provide it moving forward are no longer needed. And that's why we're moving to this larger contract moving forward. While Deloitte could apply, the services, many of the services they're providing will not be needed moving forward.
So, to answer your question, a lot of the things that they are putting in place, they will be building some infrastructure to support the HR services. Now, again, we may need some sustainability in terms of resources to maintain those, which is, I think, Director Robinson's point. We don't know how many of those because everything has not been built. It's like building a car. We know that we need 4 tires, an engine, and all of those things, but we don't know how the car is going to drive until we get to that point. So I will say that, yes, optimization and rebuilding is occurring at the same time, because we do know that as some of the other good work that Slalom has produced, they've already outlined what is needed. They've already turned over some items to us, and we have the resources in-house that can manage those. Deloitte is still building some of that for us, and we just don't know yet. So at the end of this kind of assignment, if you will, with all 3 companies, my hope is that all 3 will move out. They will all sunset. This new RFP will be there so that we can sustain the functions and the good work. These are just stopgaps for us. It's just a transition for the larger, responsibility and request. I'm not saying larger in dollars. I'm just saying we will certainly need some support, just like organizations need a little agency support when folks are on leave of absence or if there's some vacancies. We will continue to need some support to continue with the good work that we have already performed as a team. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, and more specifically, that we will need in the future, once this contract is sunset, we will need some more help in terms of actual recruiting. Is really on the recruiting aspect, not the processing of employees, not some of the other things that HR does.
So my goal is for those 3 vendors, as I mentioned before, to assist us with continuing to decrease the large number of vacancies. I mean, if we can have these 57 resources to come in here and really help. Now, everyone of the 57 are not recruiters. I wish that were the case, But if we can decrease that volume to a manageable point with our current resources, then we can say, board, thank you for all that you have given us, and we can take it from here. I'm not convinced that that can happen right now because we continue to lose, you know, folks during retirement and some resignations and so forth, and you see those stats every month. So just as we fill the number of good positions, we lose a number of employees. And so we haven't quite arrived yet at that, and I'm not confident that we can sustain recruiting without some support. Long-term, a minimum of 24 to 36 months, because this hole that was already dug when I started was at least over a decade old.
Yeah, and what you're saying is you'll come back with a different type of request.
That's right.
Yeah. In 6
I mean, it
months.
will still have
Yeah.
some of these components. It will have recruiting, it will have data analytics, technology support. I mean, I don't want to lose the momentum that we have gained, but I'm not suggesting coming back every 6 months talking about 3 particular vendors. I'm talking about one consolidated approach to this as other individuals have come before you, so that this is more of a, you know, a framework and roadmap. You will continue to hear the outputs and the progress at every board meeting. That will continue. And then the HR committee meeting, I can give you a, you know, a deep dive into that. So everything will still be fully transparent. I'm just looking to get us across the water until that RFP is, you know, produced out and we can get some good vendors to say yes to us.
Okay.
Thank you.
We've spent more than enough time, I think, on this, considering the scope of the contract, and the fact that we're going to be coming back with a much bigger RFP. The things that I think that are important to know is that Deloitte's is not writing the RFP for us.
That's correct.
This is an extension, so we can go out for a master RFP to consolidate 3 contracts, revision what we're doing, and continue to get the wins that we are on bringing down vacancies.
That's right.
And that we're being consistent with how we do other contracts in terms of trying to be as efficient as we can and not create multiple spin-offs as we transition into that. So, Val, do you have anything else, or is that your own?
Let me just say something real quick before Valerie responds. I'm moving the agenda because we've already spent more time on this than we need. If anybody has any questions or doesn't support it, then we'll deal with that later, but we need to get to the next item. It's not about it. This is a statement for the reference to the comments that you made about preparation and information. I concur that this is not the forum to have this deep dive discussion, but I think that it's important to note that as a board member, I speak for myself, the timing of these briefings need to be discussed in detail. There needs to be more time between when we meet and when we have an opportunity to have these discussions.
We can have that discussion. They're not always the same, and a lot of it has to do with the fact that we do these every month, and we are still understaffed in a lot of the functions that take to get these transmittals in front of us. We're doing a lot better than we used to, and like I said, there's if you have questions, 7 days is not a long time to figure out the answers to your question. And if you don't have the ability to do it, right now this is where we're at. But we can have the conversation. Val, what else do you have?
I have 2 more.
Okay.
Believe it or not. Thank you. The next one is Carrington and Carrington. They are an executive search firm. We've brought in a number of leadership individuals under Carrington and Carrington. This is a request to amend and extend for 6 months as well. Total value of $826,000. So, questions? Minority-owned business as well.
And any questions on this item?
And the last one that I have is for University of Chicago Harris School of Public Policy. This is an opportunity for us to bring in 5 one-year fellowship graduate students to the organization. We've identified per fellow, so this is over a 6-month request. And so we've identified the departments of nursing, quality and safety, administration, Mr. Rocha, and county care for those 5 individuals to be placed. So we're excited about this program. It's an opportunity for us to bring in some new talent and also give them exposure to our organization. Questions?
Thanks, Val.
Thank you. Have a good
We're gonna move on to item, request number 10, nursing. Dr. Peters.
Good morning, Chair Ryder and Directors. The request in front of you is to have a vendor to provide services for a high-level disinfection as well as the cleaning services for endoscopes here at Stroger as well as Providence. The vendor was selected through an RFP process, and this is the request to have a $3.6 million for the next 3 years. And the initial request is for 1 year with the ability to extend for 2 times for the total of 3 years. Any questions?
Hearing none. Thank you, Dr. Peters.
Thank you.
The next, 9 to 10 are coming from Craig Williams, our Chief Administrative Officer for Operations and Development. Craig, take it away.
Thank you. I'll try to go quick. First one I have is for Beckman Coulter. It is an increased contract for $1,225,000. This contract ends 2/28 of 24. This vendor provides equipment, reagents, consumables for our labs across chemistry, hematology, and microbiology. We've had some expansion of services. So as an example, we're doing fentanyl testing now, which is driving some of this request for increase. Next item is GE Precision Healthcare. This is an extended increased contract for $8,474,000, asking for a 12-month extension through 11/30 of 24. And GE currently provides our clinical engineering services system-wide at both hospitals, as well as on call for all of our ACHN clinics. We're actually going to be posting an RFP for these services in Q4 of 2023. AB Staffing Solutions is also an extended increased contract for $6,976,000. It's a 12-month contract period starting in 9/26/23 through 9/25 of 24. This vendor actually provides specialized temporary placement of radiology tech personnel across all our radiology modalities. We currently have a little over 40 vacancies in radiology across the system, and they've been a really good source to provide this specialized talent for us. Executive Building Maintenance, EBM, this is an extended increased contract for $2,245,000. We're asking for a 6-month contract period extension from 7/1 of 23 to 12/31 of 23. And this request will continue the provision of supplemental environmental services cleaning staff at Stroger, Providence, and Harrison Square. And we actually have done an RFP for these services, and we're currently in the evaluation phase. Pixentia Corporation is an extended increased contract for $425,000. It's a grant-funded contract. It's a 24-month contract period through 7/1/23 through 6/30/25. And this is funded through the Title X Family Planning Grants, as well as the 2023-24 CDPH External Healthcare Grants. And they provide some software around provider modules, patient user applications for our maternal child health division. The next one is Dixon Coulter. It's an execute contract for, I'm sorry, I'm at the wrong one. Sorry. It's an amended extended increase for $440,000. This vendor provides our temperature monitoring across all of our clinical sites. That's a regulatory compliance. You can sort of do this through a system, or you can do it manually. The manual process comes with a lot of risk, obviously, and so this would be to extend this contract and allow for additional placements of temperature monitoring. Next one is Beckman Coulter. It's an execute contract for $15,681,000. It's a 5-year contract starting 3/1/24 through 2/28/30. And this vendor provides equipment, reagents, consumables across our labs, focused in chemistry, hematology, and microbiology. ABM Healthcare Support Services is an execute contract for $6,356,000. It's a 36-month contract period we're asking for starting 12/1/23 through 11/30/26. It has 2 one-year renewals. And they would provide our management over our environmental services department at Stroger, Harrison Square, Core, Providence, and at our professional building. In this contract, they provide a number of talent, including a system-wide director, training managers, and quality patient experience manager, as well as the depth of knowledge across ABM around providing these services so that we can really be the very best in our environmental services space. Diagnostic Stiga is an execute contract for $900,000 that was sourced through our GPO. It's a 36-month contract from 6/1/23 through 5/31/26. This is also for equipment, service and maintenance, reagents at both of our labs. Desmond is an execute contract for $864,000. It's a 36-month contract period, 10/1/23 through 9/30/26. We are doing a redesign of our Stroger loading dock, and they'll be doing the architectural and engineering work as well as construction management of that project as we move forward. Corsair LLC is an amend, extend, and increase contract for $10 million. This extension is through 11/30/23, and we use Core to supplement staffing across CCH for frontline positions. We're posting an RFP for this in Q4 of 23. This contract has come down. At our peak, we had 250 FTEs through Core, and we're down to about 143, mostly focused in our support areas. Happy to answer any questions on any of those contracts.
I'm just curious, why the reduction?
So as part of what we did around when the pandemic was at its height, we brought in folks through agency to staff some functions that we needed, right? A prime example would be screening at the front door. We've peeled that back and we've eliminated that staff.
Thanks.
Sure.
Any other questions for Craig on any of the items that he's presented? Okay, thanks, Craig.
Sure.
Let's move on to request number 21, Operations and Development and Health Plan Services. Oh,
Donica's going to take.
okay.
This may be Donica's debut at this committee.
Oh, wow.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Chair Ryder. Donica Austin Cathy, Chief Hospital Executive for John H. Stroger Jr. The request before you is an increased contract for Maximum Healthcare Services in the amount of $3,003,000. This dollar value represents various departments across Cook County Health. The request will continue to supply support services, lab technologists, lab assistants, phlebotomists, pharmacy techs, transporters, to provide staffing augmentations for Cook County Health. An RFP has been, will be posted in fourth quarter of 2023. Any questions?
Any questions for Donica? Hearing none, let's move to request number 23, I'm sorry. Health Plan Services, Aaron Gleaner, Chief Administrative Officer for Health Plan Services.
Good morning, Directors. This item before you is a expenditure authority request. This is for the final payment related to a contract with Cribs for Kids. Cribs for Kids provides sleep safe kits for Our county care members that help with SIDS, sudden infant death syndrome. Happy to answer any questions.
Aaron, just curious, before you put this program into place, and then once you put it into place, have you ever looked at the numbers to see the reductions?
I don't have that in front of me, but we can certainly look at that data.
I'm not trying to make any work for you. I was just curious because the program sounds great, and I just was curious what would be the impact of it, that's all. So don't do any work.
All right, thanks, Aaron. Trying to look to see what we should do first. So is there a motion to approve item 4A, contracts and procurement items containing request number 1 through 23, subject to completion of review by contract compliance with Charles? Already noted our note about contract compliance for these items. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion's made. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? You guys have it. Moving on, Charles, do you want to quickly go through I'm trimming some of this down today.
Yeah, I'll be brief.
Yeah, be brief.
No worries. Okay, what you have before you are MBWB metrics for contracts over 150,000 presented to the board, July 2023. Looking at the second innermost column from the right, during the month there were 17 contracts total. 11 of them had 0 goals, so 6 had contract-specific goals for 24.7 million. Only one of those were prime vendors for $115,000 and 0.5%. We had 2 for $115,000 as well, who were subcontractors for MWBE. During this particular month, we had 3 waivers for 23.6 million. Our contract that we have for acute rehabilitation services, 11.99 million, was a waiver. Our contract for histology services, 6.7 million, ended up being a full waiver. And our contract with teleradiology services, 4.8 million, was a waiver. So that's the month of July. Looking forward over to the right, for year to date, 47 contracts with goals, $2.12 million. 13 of those, 24.9 million. Primes, 24 subprimes, 47.2. Total 37 contracts on a little bit roughly over $72.5 million of participation, 34%. And there you see the 10 waivers. Next slide, Debbie, for the visual. Not our part this moment, but 1% for July, but still trending at 34% for the year.
Right. 1 month is not
Does not make a trend. Yes.
All right.
I agree.
Report of emergency purchases.
Yes, the month of August, we had one, August 14th, presented to the chair of board and the chair of finance. This contract was an emergency purchase to execute a contract for the sterile processing department, leadership and operation management on behalf of nursing with Surgical Solutions, it says Inc., but I'm sorry, it's Surgical Solutions LLC. 12-month agreement, again, providing leadership and operation management, $3.3 million, not to exceed value. That is my report.
Thank you. I'm now going to have any questions for Charles? If not, I'm going to ask Pam to come up here to do to go over the receive and file grant award related items and the transfer and funds. Pam's regular report, because we're cutting it close on time and still have contract compliance here to give us an update before our 10:30 committee meeting. Note that Pam's report is in your agenda and has been circulated to you via email, so you'll have that I'm going to incorporate it by reference into today's minutes. If anybody has any questions on her report, feel free to email her or talk to her after the meeting. But there is no report, there is no vote that we take on her her, report of the financials. Pam, go ahead on your two action items.
Sure, thank you. Pam Casera, Chief Financial Officer. Before you, you have the receive and file grant awards and renewals of $4.8 million. You can see that the bulk of those are all renewals or amendments or no-cost extensions. The only one really to speak of, a large one, is the $3 million COVID ongoing response grant. And Dr. Hasbrook is here if there are any questions on that one. And then we do have a transfer this month. Let me get, since that's so small. $57.4 million. What we're basically doing here, and Aaron is here, he can speak to some of this as well if there are any questions, but the bulk is transferring from managed care claims, $50 million of that $57 million, over to professional services for county care. And that is related to the higher than budgeted county care membership. So this is, they believe they have some cushion in the claims line, but they need to pay the other services that correspond to the increased membership, such as the third-party administrator, the pharmacy benefit manager, the marketing they've done on outreach related to redetermination. And so that's what the bulk of those monies are for.
And this is good news, because if we didn't transfer, this is the higher membership means that we're doing better. And if we have to be able to, we have to transfer funds to cover the higher membership. Otherwise, we break the budget, is I think the term that people say. But we break it we would be breaking it in a good way, but we don't like to do that, because that requires a lot of other things. So this is the most appropriate and efficient way to deal with it. Any questions?
Yeah, I was just going to say, and again, these are costs that go up proportionally with the membership. So third-party administrator, pharmacy, et cetera. Yep.
All right. Hearing none, is there a motion to receive and file item 5A, grant award related items, and 5B, the transfer of funds?
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Our final item on the agenda today, and I apologize because we're now, we don't have a lot of time left on the clock, but we'll proceed. We'll probably run over a little bit, but I'm going to ask our folks from contract compliance to come and join us and introduce yourselves. And we are excited to have you here for this update. And any questions we have, I believe they'll be more than happy to entertain them. So.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for having us. My name is Nicole Mandeville. I'm the Director of Contract Compliance. I also have with me members from my team, Janetta Cardine, the Deputy Director of specifically of the Contract Compliance Division, and also Malia Edwards is here with us as well. She's the compliance officer that is primarily responsible for overseeing and reviewing the healthcare systems contracts.
Morning.
Good morning.
So I know you're probably on meeting overload, so I'll try to do this as fast as I can.
Yeah, but it's also important, so be quick, but take the appropriate time.
Sure. Because this is my first time presenting before you, I thought it would be valuable just to kind of give you a high-level overview of who we are at Contract Compliance and how the department has changed under my leadership. So I just kind of wanted to provide that context. Can I have the next slide, please? So the mission and vision of the Office of Contract Compliance is to increase the pool of qualified, diverse vendors who are in position to participate in Cook County contracting opportunities. In addition, our office strives to monitor and track all contracts to ensure compliance with the MWBE ordinance. And we do this in several ways. We do this by promoting racial parity, contracting diversity, and also through transparency with industry best practices. Next slide, please. We also wanted to kind of introduce you to our leadership team. In the 2 years that I've been here, we have traditionally only had a director and a deputy. As we are growing the team and moving forward with the mission of making sure there is contracting equity in the contracts that are led by the government side and at the hospital side, we wanted to let you know who you could reach out to. Obviously, you can reach out to me as the Director of Contract Compliance, but we also have 3 deputy directors who support 3 separate divisions. Desiree Atkins is the deputy who supports the certification division. Again, to my right, Janetta Cardine, who supports the compliance division, and then Dr. Makiba Butler is responsible for working with the strategic initiatives division, which is our fancy way of saying all things outreach, educational pathway, and anything that advances the mission of the department for the betterment of Cook County government and the hospital. Next slide, please. We wanted to give you a little bit of context about who we are and what we do. We compartmentalize things here in the Office of Contract Compliance. So our administrative team, which is primarily consists of the leadership team, we are really working on advancing the mission and the strategic plan of the department. When we move to the contract compliance team, obviously this is the team that most folks are familiar with. They monitor and track all contracts pre-award, award, and post-award, and essentially they are making sure that the contracts are in alignment in accordance with the ordinance. Then we also have the certification team. You may be familiar with them. This is the team that works with the vendor community to see if they're eligible to participate in our program, is making sure that they obviously meet the program requirements of 51% owned and controlled by the MBE or by a minority-owned or woman-owned business, to make sure that they are eligible and ready, willing, and able to participate on county contracts. And then lastly, again, the strategic initiatives team. That team is responsible for designing and creating and implementing, again, an educational pathway to empower our vendor community. Again, we are very intentional and contract compliant. We don't want to just say we do surface level outreach, but we want to make sure that we provide vendors with the tools in their toolkit so that they are able to be successfully participate in contracting opportunities that we have here. Next slide, please. So drilling down just a little bit, we wanted to focus on the compliance team, which is what I believe draws the most questions right now, what we do and how we do it. So our team, the compliance team, has a group of compliance officers who make sure that we are setting MBE, WBE, and where relevant, DBE contract goals on Cook County and Cook County health contracts that are over $25,000. It is the role and responsibility of our compliance officers to make sure that they are monitoring this contract or these contracts to make sure that they are in compliance with any goals as it relates to our ordinance. The officers are still also responsible for reviewing contracts, utilization plans. Oh, sorry. So the compliance officers are also reviewing contracts, the utilization plan specifically, if there's any WBE participation, making sure that the information that has been provided to the department is appropriate and in form and fashion that is required by our department. They also review these contracts to establish if there's a goal that is possible on a particular contract. And then if there is no goal, they are also the same group of people who review the good faith effort that has been posed by our vendor community. And then they work with all of the various vendor departments. So again, in a nutshell, the compliance team, pre-award, they look at any solicitation that comes to them to determine if a goal can be set. If we determine a goal cannot be set, the contract is the solicitation is put out without a goal. If it goes with a goal, and it comes back and we cannot get participation, then we're obligated, to review it to see if the vendor has made sufficient good faith efforts. If that is, in order, then a waiver is provided. And then we track the contract, obviously, from beginning to end. Next slide, please. One of the things that people want to know about a lot is the contract goals that we have. I want to pause here and just, while we have the contract goals on the screen, these are not quotas, these are not required goals, these are aspirational goals, and it means just that. We aspire to spend a portion of our dollars in these prospective categories. So on goods and services, obviously, we aspire to spend 25 and 10% with MBE and WBE on contracts, construction 24 and 10, and professional services 35%. However, it is really important to call out that we set contract-specific goals. While we aspire to get these types of aspirational goals on each individual contract, we do not just say, okay, we have a contract, it's goods and services, the goal is 25%. We have to have a reasonable belief that we can attain the goal on that contract and for that to happen. Next slide, please. You can probably...
And that's gonna fluctuate, right? Like, based on goods and services, in certain industries have better representation by minority and women-owned businesses. So, you know, those are broad category goals.
Yes, and one of the things that we will be rolling out in the upcoming year as a result of our disparity study is we will refine these goals a lot more, contract by contract, where we're able to know based on the vendor database whether or not we have sufficient utilization or participation. So where you may see 35% here, I don't know if I've seen it on any of our contracts here in the healthcare system, but in some instances, to get goals on some contracts of 40% because the participation exists. So just the representation of some of the documents that we look at. This is just a representation of the utilization plan. This is what the compliance officers review on a daily basis. If you skip through, I think the next few slides, really this is what the documentation we receive from the vendor community, where if there's a prime and there's a sub who participates on that contract, this is the type of documentation that is required to us. Also required along with that documentation, if you are operating as a sub, you must provide proof that you're certified with the City of Chicago or Cook County government, and you do that by providing a reciprocal affidavit, which is on the next, well, not the next slide, but I'm on 2 slides later. But essentially, you must prove that you're certified by the City of Chicago or Cook County. You don't need to be certified by both. You just need to be certified by one or the other. So any vendor who is certified with the City of Chicago who wants to participate on a Cook County contract, they are able to participate as long as they provide us with a copy of their certification letter and an affidavit.
How is your letter of intent really used? The LOI?
The LOI? So the LOI is used by the prime to articulate what subcontractors they're going to use.
More specifically, once that LOI is signed and is submitted and they've received the credit that they have person, how do you enforce the utilization of that person? Because oftentimes the LOI will be signed, but it will not actually land into a contract for that MBE.
So I'll answer this question. Generally, when a letter of intent is signed and the contract is awarded to that prime, that letter of intent becomes a part of that contract. And so we do monitor the letters of intent. Once the contract is awarded, we notify the primes and the subs.
Thank you.
And we then follow that contract from beginning to end.
Thank you very much.
So it is based on when the contract is awarded. You are absolutely correct. Many letters of intent are signed, but it is not a part of the contract until the contract is awarded.
And just for additional context, one of the things that we actually rolled out this year was if there's an instance where a vendor feels like they've been used and they have a formal complaint, before they had to kind of, call around and email folks, we now have a formal process that's online where the vendor can log into the system and file a formal complaint without, the prime knowing that they filed it, send us all the information they need, letting us know, hey, I'm on this contract. I was told I was on this contract. I haven't getting paid or I'm not being utilized at all. So we now have a formalized vendor complaint process where we didn't have one previously.
So that's online?
Yes.
That's online through our diversity monitoring system.
The vendor has to be actually on the contract in order for the reviews module for us to investigate if they have not been utilized or paid on that contract.
And the LOI becomes a part of the contract once it's awarded.
Correct.
Okay.
Do you know the number of complaints you've gotten? Do you track that, and the type of complaints have you got?
So we just rolled out the reviews module this year, at the top of the year, January 1st, I believe. And the compliance officer, since we've rolled it out, we've only seen a couple of instances where, subs have complained, but I encourage my compliance officers to be the mediator between the primes and the subs to keep the communication open and to keep the relationship, cordial, because we don't want to disrupt services. We don't want there to be any issues with that contract. So we try to minimize the complaints, but if it is something that turns into a big issue that we do need to investigate, then we will, but we've not had too many complaints so far.
So the number of actual complaints and the percentage of complaints are relatively low?
They're relatively low. I mean, I think this year I've only counted 2. But that doesn't negate the fact that folks will call around to any sympathetic ear that they can get. If they call around to a sympathetic ear, that may not necessarily be tracked in our system. So I am aware that vendors will call the president's office or whomever they think they can get on the phone to kind of raise awareness around their concerns. Any other? Oh, okay. This is just a representation of the good faith effort transparency report. This is a document that the vendor is required to fill out if they have indicated that there is not sufficient M or W participation, and we've established a goal on the contract. So this is that document. So we just wanted to give you a preview of what that looked like. Next slide, please. And then this right here is representative of the certification reciprocal affidavit. If you are certified with the city, this is what the city provides to us. Any of our vendors who are certified by Cook County, they take this same affidavit and provide it to the city of Chicago if they were willing to participate on one of those contracts. But again, just giving you a view of the documentation that we receive. Next slide. This is just a high-level overview of the minimum qualifications to be certified by Cook County government. This is pretty standard across the board. In order to be considered for certification, you must at least meet these minimum requirements, which is proving that you're 51% owned and controlled by a minority or a woman, be a small business as defined by the Small Business Administration, meet the personal net worth requirement test, which is hosted on the Cook County website, and you must be located in the Cook County marketplace, which is Cook and the Collier counties. Next slide, please. And then lastly, on the road is simply just us really highlighting that we are available to connect with the vendor community. We do so in a multitude of ways. We do this by facilitating workshops. With the advent of COVID, we have really had to be creative of how we engage the vendor community. So we're doing this more so with virtual events. We've probably used Teams and YouTube until we've all turned blue in the face. But the good thing is, while a lot of people want us to return to in-person events, which we're happy to do. We have found that, virtual events lowers the barrier, to access to getting to, the information that folks want. I mean, who wants to pay $40 to come park, in the loop? So I think this has been a little bit more beneficial. So in an effort to make sure that we're casting a wider net, we are recording a host of educational content for the vendor community that they have access to, and then also engaging with various members of the community to highlight the great work that we do, and then also just highlight the information that we feel that continues to be a pain point for user departments and procurement when it comes to vendors engaging with Cook County government and the health system. And I think that's a lot. Oh, you don't have to worry about those slides. I already said it. So essentially, that's all we had. It was just we wanted to give you a high-level overview of some of the things that we do in our department, and we'd be happy to take any questions.
How large is your team?
Right now, my team is 15. We are short 15, so the team size is 30, and we've been working to make the necessary adjustments to grow the team, especially the hospital team as well, because given the current environment, you can't manage the load of contracts that are let. Malia is a trooper. She manages a lot of contracts by herself. The government side is managing a lot of contracts by itself. And so you can imagine when you don't have people to do the work, then things get missed. So we're really trying to make sure that we move beyond being a small but mighty team, but being a robust team.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Very informative.
All right.
Since we often hear about contract compliance in Charles' report, he's always contract with compliance.
Yeah.
That's a reference point. So it's nice to see that there are actually people that are referring to.
I promise we're not robots.
Well, we often get questions that actually fall into your realm. So, I know that you guys are downtown, but anytime you want to help us staff the meeting, if questions that fall into the lane of contract compliance come up, they may actually be helpful, because I sometimes, especially when we get new directors, they think it's a function that we do here, and it's not. It's not. So we're not always readily able to describe your processes. So.
Well, we're more than happy. We have actually, this is one of our slide decks. We have a more robust slide deck that we've been experimenting with, because we do realize we've changed things a little bit in the way the department operates. So we're happy to do a round of meet and greets over here at the hospital with the new directors, or if you need us to just make sure we're available at your meeting, then we will be happy to do so.
That'd be great, and we'll talk to Charles about it, and we'll get back to you. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
The folks attending the next committee meeting have arrived. I found them in the hallway. So I believe we exhausted all the other agenda items, so the meeting's adjourned. Thank you.